Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Hello and welcome to the 9th lecture in the blockchain series. In the 8th lecture we looked at use cases for blockchain in the business world, non-fintech business world. We saw 4 examples, one for roadside service for automobiles across the country, one in logistics, one in traceability in ensuring safety in food chain, and a 4th one in how we can use blockchain to crowdfund a movie. Other than these, blockchains also are finding significant application in what is referred to as public sector. Public sector on a generic basis, in the narrower sense it means these publicly owned companies like HMT, HAL, BML and things like that, but in a broader sense across the world, public sector includes organizations like governments, ministries, various regulatory authorities, NGOs, aid agencies, international agencies. All these are normally combined together into a sector known as referred to as public sector, and blockchains are finding increasing use in making their operations more transparent, more efficient, more applicable, and more importantly provide inclusion. Inclusion is a big issue today because a lot of benefits of technology tend to be exclusivist, they are not applied to everyone. So providing inclusion to technologies and financial instruments, various other tools is one big topic for all public sector that they are wrestling with, they are providing to provide, and blockchains are finding increasing applications. In fact, many applications of blockchain in public sector, in governance, in providing inclusion are turning out to be more exciting than their applications in private sector itself. So in this session let us take a look at some of the basic concepts there and various use cases. The use cases make clear what kind of uses blockchains are being put to use. Blockchain is increasingly seen as a key component in providing good governance. The capability of blockchains to provide transparency while maintaining security of data fits well with the aims of good governance. The key aim of good governance, other than delivering services efficiently and provide inclusion, is transparency. Governments are more efficient, they provide good governance if they have better transparency. And blockchains fit very well with the basic aims of governance. Governments all over the world are trying out various initiatives to leverage blockchain. I have included a source at the bottom from which I sourced this picture. In 2018, as you can see, there are blockchain initiatives done everywhere across the world. They have been done in Asia, in Africa, in Europe, Australia, South America and North America. This is a map which lists the number of blockchain initiatives in various countries. Let us look at the color coding. In India, as of 2018, about 7 blockchain initiatives have been publicized in governance, of which 3 are still in the exploratory stage. These various organizations, government agencies, NGOs and all are still doing a study to see whether is it applicable to us, can we profitably use that, if we can implement, is it feasible, will people use that. So they are at the exploration stage, they are still researching and they are still strategizing. If we were to apply blockchain, for example, to manage driving licenses, how do we go about it? They are still strategizing. 3 projects. 2 projects are in the stage of proof of concept or prototyping or incubation. Yesterday we talked about the sandbox. In one of the earlier lectures I talked about sandbox. These are typically the type of initiatives which will be tried in a sandbox. A proof of concept. We do a small test to see can we do it, does it work as we planned, do we need to change anything. The proof of concept done by RBI through IDRBT that I discussed in a previous class comes under this category. Sometimes they are also referred to as pilot projects. Prototyping, we develop something which may not have all the features, but it has the basic features. Let us see how it tries. This is very commonly used in automotive industry, aero industry. Same concept has been brought to IT industry also. So, we build a blockchain to do some purpose, to record all driver's licenses. It may not have all the features like changing address and everything, but it does the basic thing of recording driver's licenses, and we will find out how it works, how easy it is to use, do people find it friendly. And the last category, 2 such initiatives in India are in development or live. These projects have already been developed, they have already put into production, the customers are people who are expected to use already using it. So, likewise you see blockchain initiatives happening everywhere. Obviously, the biggest number is in the United States where it all originated, 27 initiatives in the public sector. There are many more in private sector in the US, 27 initiatives in the US are in the public sector. We will see one example of that later. In Mexico they are happening, in Brazil, in countries like Senegal, Ghana, South Africa, Kenya, and almost all European countries, Russia, Kazakhstan, China. Every country is trying various initiatives to leverage blockchain in public sector to deliver public services. And as I mentioned, many commentators, analysts find this to be the most exciting part of blockchain. And we will see one example later. A whole country is putting everything online and putting them on blockchain, all the activities. We sometimes read in science fiction as to how everything we do is done online and captured automatically. This country seems to be almost heading that way, very exciting I must say. So, this is one more graphic within public sector. As I meant when I said public sector, it includes various stakeholders, various organizations within that. A broader definition includes public sector, government and government agencies, for-profit agencies which are delivering education and things like that, foundations or trusts, what we call as trusts or foundations, like there is a Ford Foundation, Rockefeller Foundation, various other foundations, and then there is non-profit or academia. All these organizations are generally grouped together as public sector. So, how are the blockchain initiatives happening within these subgroups? The growth over a period of time. The first blockchain approximately came to the market around 2009. Before that, as you can see, some efforts have been there at a distributed ledger. The first successful blockchain came into existence around 2009, that is Bitcoin. Bitcoin is the first example of first successful implementation of a blockchain, and since then slowly starting from 2010, suddenly there seems to have been an increase in interest in around 2013, and that increase in a period of 4 years has quadrupled and more. Now, the biggest chunk obviously has been in for-profit public organizations. The second biggest chunk is from non-profit are academic organizations. Government, slowly their participation is increasing, and there are a whole bunch of initiatives which are either unknown or cannot be classified. So, in general there is increasing interest in from public sector in leveraging blockchain, and among those sectors, this study, the first study is from a European organization called OSPI. This study is from Stanford University, it is a study done by Stanford University. So, I am intermittently I am going to use information from both the studies in this lecture. This also has assessed within sub areas, within public sector itself, among those organizations, there are organizations focused on different areas of public sector. What is the state of maturity of various projects? So, they have identified some sectors. One sector in the public sector, one area in public sector is democracy and governance. What are the initiatives in ensuring governance like voting and ensuring transparency? For example, our RTI is aimed at ensuring transparency of information. What are the initiatives in those areas? What are the initiatives in land rights? Another very hot area, highly discussed. What are the initiatives in philanthropy, aid and donors? What are the initiatives in health and delivery of health? Initiatives in agriculture, initiatives in financial inclusion. Finance itself comes under the rubric of fintech, which is predominantly done by private sector, but as we have seen, public sector has an active participation in fintech also by providing a sandbox. In the previous lecture we talked about the RBI sandbox. That is an example of public sector and private sector working together. So, fintech involves that. financial inclusion, things like opening Jan Dhan accounts and all come under public sector. Also in energy, climate and environment. So, this is the color coding that projects have been initiated. In what time frame are they going to be successful? They start bearing results. So, as we can see in democracy and governance, among all the projects that this project studied, this study from Stanford looked at, almost 60% are going to produce an impact in the next 6 months. They are already at a stage of maturity. This initiative is already in the process. This was as of 2018, if I remember. Within 0 to 6 months, they are going to produce their impact. About 20% in this color coding over the next 6 to 12 months, these projects which are being tried out are going to produce their results. About about 5% take 1 to 2 years, another 5% will take 2+ years, and another 10% do not know. That probably is the more mature field. Most of the initiatives in the democracy and governance are expected to bear fruit in the next 6 to 12 months. Next comes land rights. About 40 to 50% are expected to be mature in the next 0 to 6 months, and almost 80%, total 80% will start bearing fruits over the next 12 months, either from 0 to 6 or 6 to 12. There are initiatives in energy and climate and environment. We will see a use case there also. That is an area in which its maturity, the application trial of blockchain initiatives is running a bit slow. Only very few, about 5% of the projects are expected to be effective in the next 6 to 12 months. A biggest chunk, more than 50% in the energy, climate and environment. Initiatives have started, they will start bearing fruits after 2 years. Everything in between, health, agriculture, financial inclusion, they all fall somewhere in between in terms of maturity of those projects. Some areas within public sector, some areas of application have been found. Remember, when we develop a blockchain, one of the topics we discussed was we should first identify whether blockchain is suitable. Does this field, does this realm, this area of business, this area of operations, does it have characteristics which can be best served by a blockchain, like establishing transparent trust, establishing non-changeable addition or maintenance of records, establishing traceability. Are these the key requirements if this realm of operations? In that case, blockchain can be developed profitably. So, based on that, this organization from OECD, OPSI, have identified certain areas which they think can leverage blockchain more easily, better than any other technology and better than any other field. One such area is identity. Establishing and maintaining identities for citizens and residents like birth certificates, marriage licenses, visas, death records. These are all the means by which we show our identity. How do I know who I am? When I am traveling internationally, only one document is accepted, my passport. However, within the country, there are a lot of documents through which I can provide my identity. I can provide my voter's ID, my driver's license, my PAN card. Today, almost universally, we prove our identity by means of an Aadhaar card. So, different countries have different ways of proving identity, and identity is not just who I am. Identity also says what I am. For example, if I want to prove that I am married, a marriage license proves that. If I want to prove that one of my parents passed away, this is a matter when it comes to inheritance and things like that. How do I prove that aspect of my parents' identity, that they are no longer alive? By providing a death certificate. So, there are different aspects of identity which we use, and all these things can be easily put on blockchain. For example, today if you look at Aadhaar, if I want to change my address, I have to go to a site or I have to go to an Aadhaar service center, fill in the form, submit my documents, and then my address will be changed. If the whole thing is put on a blockchain, if I can prove my identity by means of a digital certificate or some other means, I should be allowed to change my address transparently. I do not have to go there, I can go to this Aadhaar in the blockchain, my Aadhaar entry on a blockchain, prove my identity who I am once and for all, and then change my address, far more easier. And the moment I change my address, I can also scan, say, a telephone bill for example, attach it to that, and somebody can verify and my address becomes permanent. We can put a smart contract on top of that. So, identity, how we establish identity, how do we start with that and how do we use it later. And one more thing, and people, we have seen that people can abuse by changing their identity, stealing identities, that can be minimized. Once I have established my identity as Sudhendar Hanumantha on the blockchain, whenever I get a driver's license, when I get a passport, when I get Aadhaar, they all go back and somebody can trace that only one person has gotten all these documents in his or her name. Second, personal records, something like interoperable health records. When we change, when I go from one city to another city, let us say I am meeting a cardiologist for whatever reason, now I have to physically carry all the documents with me and give it to the doctor. Instead, if my doctor here has put all the records on a blockchain and made it available, all those documents are available to the next cardiologist when I change my location. When I move from Mysore to some other place, I go to some local cardiologist, that cardiologist can get my entire case history if my health records are put on the blockchain. Of course, there has to be an approval process. I have to approve him accessing my records, those can be taken care of. But it is far easier than me keeping track of all my documents, making sure that I carry them, making sure that I do not lose them, I put them in a correct chronological order, all those hassles, and sometimes if I misplace the order, it may affect my treatment there. So, such mishaps can be avoided if we can put our personal records like health records, insurance records and things like that. Land title and registry, this probably in public sector, probably the maximum number of initiatives are in land title registry, proving that, say I have tried to buy a plot to build a house from some party. One of the most important aspects, one of the most important problems there, those who have tried to buy land is to make sure that this person actually owns the land. This person owns clear title to that land. Getting that document, in various cases it is called an Encumbrance Certificate, khata and various other documents, is quite a time consuming, costly process. And after all that, we must still not be clear whether it is correct. So, it is a big challenge, we will see we will see an example where what kind of problems it led to, and you will be surprised which country it is. It is a very advanced country. Even in a country like that, proving land ownership used to be a contentious issue till recent past, and hence many governments are looking at this as the area where blockchain can be used very profitably, with high rates of success, lot of projects. So, details and historic records related to real estate and property transactions, and we know that lot of litigation also happens in land provenance, in proving who owns the piece of land. Supply chain management, inventory, we already saw two examples in the commercial world. Public sector also can use, especially for example, we have a public distribution system, what we call as ration shop. They probably can use blockchain in a similar manner to reduce their cost of carrying the inventory, for the logistics, things like that. Tracking an asset from creation, transportation, purchase and inventorying. Benefits, entitlement and aid, another area especially for international NGOs. How do we know that the aid we have provided to some country, we are an NGO in this country, people are donating money for us to provide aid to some other country, how do we know it is reaching the beneficiary? How are you doing it transparently? How can you do it at the lowest cost possible? So, there is one example of using blockchain in benefits, entitlements and aid. Things like social security, medical benefit payments, domestic and international aid, anticipatory automated payments could be automated through smart contracts. Social security is something unique in the US, but there are similar plans, but some of the schemes coming up in India also come under this category. Contract and vendor management. This is big issue in most public sector. In most countries, the government and various government organizations are very big buyers of products and services. Even so in India, in fact, the government in many areas, for example, computers. Governments buy the maximum number of computers in the country, either for their own use or for distribution through various schemes. Many governments have scheme to distribute laptops to high school children. So, computers are heavily bought by governments. Bicycles, many state governments have provision to provide free bicycles to girls especially. So, governments do buy bicycles, governments do buy textbooks, they buy uniforms, they buy shoes. In various areas, government is a very big purchaser, and how do we ensure that the process happens quickly with minimal effort, transparently, so that everybody knows what has happened. There is no opacity, which often can allow people to misuse the system. By providing transparency, we can reduce wastage, we can reduce misuse, and make sure that it happens in the most efficient way and the benefits reach to the beneficiaries. Tracking and the other part is paying vendors. Many vendors who deal with the government complain that getting payments takes a lot of time. So, that can be made faster. Tracking and paying vendors, managing purchase commitments and transactions, monitoring schedule performance. It can allow for perfect transparency of government expenditure. So, government expenditure is public expenditure, money collected from the people. So, we all have a right to know how it is spent. It can be made transparent using a blockchain. Voting, very interesting application. I briefly did touch upon it in one of the previous talks. Blockchains can enable new methods of digital voting, ensuring eligibility, accurate counting and auditing. Today in India, except for those allowed to do postal balloting, rest of us have to go to where our votes are registered and vote there. For example, I live in Mysore, my vote is registered in Bangalore. During every election, I need to travel to Bangalore to vote. I cannot sit in Mysore and do an online voting for the constituency in Bangalore, and there are various reasons why it has not been allowed, but blockchain can address many of those reasons and make e-voting possible. And streamlining intra-agency processes. Blockchains and smart contracts can automate transaction handling and improve information sharing, which allows each agency to better focus on their own mission and tech without as much need to consider others' tech. Let us go back to the example which IBM provided in logistics. There were how many? There are 30 forms, 30 agencies to be interacted with. If each of them had to deal with one to one, or each of them had to take an initiative to do the next transaction with them, there will be 30 different transactions of 30 different people involved in doing those. And this process can add significant delay to the process, to the whole cycle. So, to streamline that, if we can put all on the blockchain, that is the solution provided, that the job of Clear is selling, exporting flowers. All the agencies are on a blockchain, where instead of each one sending the document to the next agency, we all put on the blockchain. It is available for everybody for their perusal. It streamlines the process of interagency processing. So, these are some of the areas within these various public sector organizations that have been identified as very suitable for adopting blockchain. And this is a list of number of initiatives based on the potential use cases. About 42 blockchains have been applied in strategy and research. Identity, remember this, a potentially identified. About 25 initiatives identified in the world are in the area of identity. Personal records, health records, financial records, about 25 initiatives. Economic development, how do we deliver economic development to the beneficiaries, about 24. Financial services, 20 in public sector. Financial services in private sector are many more. Land title registry, 19 of them. In the single area, 19 initiatives are at work to see if we can use blockchain in that. Digital currency issued by central bank. Though I did mention that many central banks do not look upon cryptocurrency favorably. In fact, in our case, RBI has actually banned them. But many governments are thinking of issuing their own digital currency instead of a physical currency. Managing benefits and entitlements, health benefits, the Jan Ayush Yojana plan, Mudra Yojana plan, these are all benefits. How do we manage them? Transparently, efficiently, and at the lowest cost. Compliance and reporting. If you run a factory, you have to report every 3 months, send a bunch of reports. If you run a business, you have to send a bunch of reports to RBI and company registry and various organizations. Can we automate? As an educational institution, for example, at my institute, once a year we have to send a report to AICTE and to various other organizations, different reports to various organizations, and we have to actually sit and write a report and send it on time. Can we automate that? Can we put on a blockchain? So, whenever AICTE wants, they can come and check whether we are complying with their rules. About 12 initiatives are in that area. and researching standards. How do we ensure common standards? So, even within public sector there is so much variety, and everybody is trying various initiatives to see how best they can leverage this ground changing technology, game changing technology. So, let us start look at a few use cases in each of these. One use case in democracy, one in land rights, one in health, one in agriculture. Let us look at a few use cases in each of these areas that will make it clear what is that governing agencies, what is that public sector is looking at to leverage blockchain and how they are planning, and what are the intended benefits. Application of blockchain in agriculture. Some of the key highlights of this study as I mentioned was done by Stanford University. In agriculture, among the initiatives that they studied, most initiatives are less than 2 years old and none reach more than 1000 beneficiaries. We know US is a country where not much of the population is in agriculture, it is estimated to be about 2% or less, but in lot of other countries, India included, a significant percent of the population is involved in agriculture. For example, in estimates in India, more than 50% of the population is directly involved in agriculture. What this tells is, looking at all the initiatives, they are all essentially in the state of a pilot project. Small projects people are still trying, which reaches something like 1000 beneficiaries. To be really successful, this should be scalable to millions of users. Like in our case, if 50% of the population is dependent on agriculture, that means about 600 million people, 60 crore people are dependent on agriculture. So, the projects right now are not on that scale, they are being tried on very small scale, but there are a number of projects though. Pilots and small scale agriculture programs are occurring in at least 13 countries. At least 13 countries are trying these small projects to see how it works. Once it works, probably they will roll it across to much bigger numbers. 13% of initiatives could reach more than 1 million beneficiaries. Although all of them are less than 1000, already about 1/7 of all of them which are being tried in 13 countries, potentially they can reach 1 million customers or more each. That means they are capable of being rolled out, they are scalable, that is the term we use. What we try for 1000 users, same thing can be seamlessly expanded to 1 million users. 75% of applications have moved beyond the idea for stage or for profit. So, it is a for profit applications. You know, there are a lot of organizations in India also which are for profit organizations, but they are working in the agriculture sector. Like they are trying to provide better input to the farmers, so that farmers can increase their yield. They are and with various contracts, like these companies will increase their yield and buy the yield. They buy the yield from them to provide them the best market, the best prices for their product. Many companies are providing them key inputs like better quality seeds, better quality of fertilizer, so that the yield can be increased, and they also have a commitment to buy back that yield. So, there are a lot of for profit organizations involved in the agriculture, and it appears they are the most aggressive in leveraging blockchain. So, majority of applications which are ready, which are beyond a pilot are being in use, are in this kind of for profit sector in agriculture. Here is one example. This comes from the United States, one case study. The name of it is called Grassroots Cooperative, in cooperation with a private company called Heifer USA. This company is in the area of beef, meat. Consumers of food products. Remember, one case study we studied in the previous class, the case of Walmart and IBM, was about providing safety in food, by means of traceability. We see a reflection of that from a consumer's viewpoint. Consumers of food products, particularly high end or premium products. We know we have a class of products today called organic products, which have no fertilizers, no artificial ingredients, and generally assumed to be healthy for you. But we also notice that they cost more. So, people who buy organic products are willing to pay more for these additional healthy characteristics of the food. No pesticides, no artificial ingredients or anything like that. So, when such customers are paying extra for that food, particularly high end or premium products, demand a certain degree of transparency and trust to justify the higher prices they are paying. I am paying 20, there are this organic milk For example, there is an initiative to sell organic milk in Mysore. That milk costs almost twice as much as regular dairy milk from Nandini, for example. So, when I am paying more, because they say we are not adding any hormones, the cows are naturally fed and various other virtues are claimed for this product. So, when I am paying more price as a premium customer, how am I sure that it is actually true? On my own, I cannot test milk and find out for all these hormones and various things added. How do I trust that if this company comes and says, give me double the price because I am providing you with organic milk? So, I needed a degree of trust. So, now we can see where this is going. Whenever we need to establish trust, blockchains are an ideal mechanism to do that between any two non-interacting parties. Certain degree of transparency and trust to justify the higher price they are paying. Particularly if I suspect one particular lot, one day milk I received tasted a little different, how can I go back and check where it came from? That will come only with transparency. Yet due to controversies over GMOs, genetically modified organisms, pesticides and food fraud, many times food has been found to be contaminants, find lot of products, unclean products added to them and things like that. Consumer trust in the food system today is low. Consumers oftentimes do not trust what they are buying, rated 5.84 on a scale of 1 to 10. So, in this is survey was done in the US. So, even in a country with US with all its strict standards and testing and traceability, consumers have low level of trust in the safety of food they are consuming. Grassroots is an agricultural cooperative in Arkansas. It is a group of farmers who have pooled together to produce and jointly market their products. It is called Grassroots. Has a long standing commitment to creating as much transparency and traceability as possible. This group of farmers is committed to prove to their customers that you can always trust us because we have provided this proof, traceability, you can always trust. To give an example of how transparency can prove trust, there is a restaurant in Bangalore, they say our food is prepared in such hygienic environment that you can walk through the kitchen, which is true. You can actually, going to the dining room, you actually walk through the kitchen and see for yourself how hygienic the place is, how food is prepared in hygienic methods. This is an example of an organization committed to transparency. They are very transparent, they claim we are hygienic, come and see. Likewise, this group Grassroots is also committed to transparency and traceability as possible, as well as direct connections between producers and consumers. So, you have a doubt about this pack of meat which you bought from our company, come and talk to the farmer who produced it. The goal is to give their farmers an edge in the marketplace. So, if customers trust that any product I buy from this company is true, if they claim that it is free of these hormones or these artificial additives, I know it is, then I am willing to pay more because I trust. More people are willing to go to this restaurant because they have established the trust by being transparent. You can go to the kitchen and see, and thus an edge in the marketplace, increasing sales and thus their income. That is the objective. The objective why this company putting so much stress on transparency and traceability is because once consumers trust, remember these are premium customers, they are willing to pay more. So, after the general manager of Grassroots learned about the application of blockchain technology in supply chains, he founded the technology partner Provenance. He founded one more company, and with the backing of Heifer USA, a branch of Heifer International, launched a blockchain powered app in August 2017 that allows every package of chicken marketed and sold by Grassroots to be traced on the Ethereum blockchain. Remember, Grassroots is a bunch of farmers who have grouped together. I go to the supermarket, buy a pack of chicken produced by Grassroots, there is some barcode and some number. Using that number, the example given is people can scan that barcode into a smartphone app. That smartphone app will tell you from which farmer, from which date this pack of chicken came to you. It provides traceability all the way to from where that product originated. So, it uses a combination, it uses a blockchain to transparently keep that record. It has developed an app so that we can read that record easily from our smartphone. I pick up the chicken packet, scan it to my phone, immediately I get information saying that this piece of chicken originated from that particular farm, it originated on such and such a day, it took so long to reach our table. So, now I have full faith, I can buy chicken from grass cooperatives, knowing fully well that at any point I can go back and see where it came from. If something went wrong, I can trace it back where it came from. Even otherwise, I can trust that whatever they say is what I am going to get, hence I am willing to pay a little more for that product. One example of application of blockchain in agriculture. Democracy and governance, interesting example. I already alluded to a news item that mentioned that in this country of Sierra Leone, they did deploy blockchain to verify voting. In fact, I even used this as an example of a public permission blockchain. That is one example where public permission blockchain. Unfortunately, as I mentioned, there are a lot of contradictory news items after that. However, the point remains valid that blockchains can be used very effectively in democracy and governance. Democracy means elections and voting. Key highlights of this study: out of 200 and odd projects they studied, 21 initiatives make democracy and governance one of the biggest sectors. Almost 10% of all the projects were in democracy and governance. As early as 2008, government initiatives were exploring blockchain for social impact. Remember, in 2008 all we had was distributed ledgers. We did not have blockchain as we recognize it today. The concept was there, the implementation was not. They had what is called a distributed ledger. Only 38% of these initiatives are for profit, less than half the amount in other sectors. In all other sectors, for profit organizations have taken the lead in applying blockchain in public sector in general, except in democracy and governance. Less than half of them are in the for profit, most of them are by governments and various local bodies, regulatory bodies themselves. And good news is they are all at a highly mature state. These 81% of these initiatives will achieve impact by early 2009. That means it must have happened already by now. That is this sector, democracy and governance. As we see, a big chunk, 80% of all projects are expected to be effective within 12 months of this study, which is early 2019. Let us look at a governance example. This is an example. If you make a search for blockchain and governance on the web, the maximum number of entries you will get is about this country called Estonia. Let us go back and see where is Estonia. Estonia is this little country here. It is in the country between Russia and Finland and the Baltic Sea. In fact, three little countries are there, Estonia, Lithuania and Latvia. These three are together called as Baltic republics. Estonia is the northernmost of them. And as I said, if search for governance and blockchain, maximum number of entries will come back to Estonia. It has done it to such an extent that each paper you read, each article you read addresses one aspect, and this number is very small. We will see what the actual numbers are. So, this little country has put governance on the agenda and it is leveraging blockchain very heavily. And there is one project there called eStonia. Estonia has sought, the capital of this country is a city called Tallinn. Estonia has sought to provide government services electronically and over the internet since 2001. So, they got a very early start. Since the early days of the World Wide Web and the internet, this company has focused on providing public services, government services electronically. That means I should be able to get a renew my driver's license completely online. I do not have to go to the RTO in India or DMV in the US. I can apply for a Aadhaar type of number, I can apply for my benefits, I can do a change of address. All government services, getting an identity card, it has tried to put them on the web, do it electronically since 2001, when issuance of the first e-ID cards made legal. That is, today if I have to get a driver's license as my identity, if I have to get a voter's ID license, I have to go to that office. I have to go to the office, give my biometrics in some cases. Yes, we do take biometrics, give my photos, put my signature, get it through the approval process, pay a fee for that, and then thing will get mailed to me 2 weeks later or 4 weeks later. In this country, since 2001, they have been issuing e-ID cards. I can do the whole process electronically. The ID card will be sent to me by email or some other format, which I can take a copy of. They were made legal. Digital signatures possible for every citizen. Now, for my KYC, today I have to sign. Instead, I can give my certificate. This country has issued digital certificates for all its citizens. To recap, what is a digital signature? It is a pair of public and private keys which are authorized by an agency. So, this country has nominated one agency saying that this is the company which will issue digital certificates. So, this company, when I apply to them, they will generate a private key and a public key. They give the public key to me for me to keep it secret. They will keep the public key available to everyone, and whoever wants, suppose I want to sign a document, I have filled a form for opening an account, I encrypt it using my private key. This is what signing means. Now, when I send a document to the bank will use my public key to decrypt it. So, what does it prove? Only I could have sent this document to the bank. That is equivalent of signature. That is what signature says, right? When I fill the form and sign it, it is a guarantee to the bank that I am the person who has signed it. Bank has a copy of my signature, it matches the two, and assumption is nobody can imitate my signature, thus proving that I am the person who has signed this document. So, in case of digital signatures, I have encrypted using my private key. Since it can be decrypted with my public key, it ensures that only I could have sent the document. It is as good as a signature, and this country made that legal. And how does the bank trust that public signature is mine? It may carry my name, it may be somebody else, that private signature is mine, because the authorized agency says so. Like in the business world, there is a company called VeriSign, Thought, various companies do that, they certify. Likewise, Estonia has an agency which certifies that if I digitally sign a document, that government agency certifies that it is my private key. So, it has made digital signatures legal. So, if I want to apply for a driver's license, I fill the form, sign it with my private key, send it to the DMV, they decrypt it, RTO, they decrypt it, approve, send it back to me. Whole thing done electronically. So, it made digital signatures possible for every citizen. Estonia is a small country, by the way, but they have made probably 1 million population, but they have made digital signatures available to all its citizens. These digital signatures now form the basis of verification for almost every government service like land title, business registry, everything. So, their documents need not to be physically signed and scanned, you can digitally sign them by encrypting with your private key, every government document. In fact, it could almost be used as a proof of your identity like Aadhaar. There are now more than 1000 services available through the network known as e-Estonia. So, think of that. Think of all the various government services. Only some of them we deal with. Of course, all of us go to get our driver's license, we all go to get our voter's ID, some of us have gone to get our Aadhaar, all of us have Aadhaar, PAN cards, we go to get a proof of address, which could be a telephone bill. We have to go to the telephone bill proof of identity and get a telephone bill. We may get a credit card, we may get a RuPay card, for example. We will need a birth certificate, we will need a death certificate. Whenever we change a name, we have to have a change of name certificate. For each of these are all government services. When I buy a plot of land, I need to get it registered, change the kata to my name, make my entry in the Encumbrance Certificate. All these are government services. Even if I need a proof of ownership of my home, ownership of having paid taxes, I can go to the income tax office or the city corporation to get the appropriate certificate, whether it is ownership of my land or proof of having paid taxes. All these, we on a normal basis we deal with 20 to 50 such government services. This country has put 1000 of such services online. So, for pretty much we do not have to go to those government offices for anything. More than 1000 services available through the network known as, and they are all put on something called e-Estonia. As online interaction with the government expanded, it became clear that the country needed to enhance data integrity and security in addition to new methods for auditing and regulatory compliance. If each of these services maintained their own database, imagine there are 1000 databases all keeping information about me in different formats, in bits and pieces separately. So, if one of them is wrong, suppose I apply for my driver's license and I want proof of residence, that is stored in a different database. If these two do not match, they apply, I have shown something, I have applied for change of address to this agency, they have not yet done it. So, when I fill my application form for driver's license and I give an address, that does not match with what has happened in the address registry, because they are two separate things. My process gets delayed, I may be denied, they may have to say wait till it changes and then come back. So, the more distributed, if data is stored in more different databases, coordinating them with all becomes a problem. There is no one single source, and change in one place may not migrate to change in another place. There are these issues of coordination, and imagine if there are 1000 such databases. So, this country early on realized that. They realized that we are providing so many services, they all dependent on keeping this data in sync, keeping data safe. If one data gets compromised, that may affect the whole entire 1000 services. So, their solution was to implement a distributed registry or a blockchain. Now, we know we can keep all that related data in one single source. All the regulatory authorities with approval can make changes to their part of the data. For example, if there is one big file about me which includes date of birth, address, everything, if my address has to be changed, only post office may be probably authorized to go and change that, and that will become visible. That thing about blockchain, remember, if post office or somebody else changes my address, it becomes visible to everyone. Everyone can see that my address has been changed. Everyone can see when my address was changed. If I change my address today and somebody wants to know how many times I have changed my address, if that entire data is on blockchain, they can actually go to the blockchain and see how many times I changed my address, who changed my address in each case. And once I change my address today, the next change again has to be done through a proper process. I will not be allowed to make a change going back. So, as of 2016, a total of the number has increased. 975 institutions in Estonia provided 1789 services across the decentralized data exchange problem XROAD, which utilizes distributed ledger technology, which is nothing but a blockchain. So, finally, Estonia has moved to a blockchain where these institutions, the RTO, Income Tax Department, Postal Department, City, Urban Corporation, Electricity Authority, Gas Authority, the Telephone Authority, company which may continue the Passport Authority, these are all the 975 institutions. They are using a common ledger, they all make their entries into a common ledger providing 1789 services. So, they could not have done it without a blockchain. If as I just discussed, if all of them had individual databases, a single compromise, a single corruption of one database, one place can throw the whole system out of order, but they are able to maintain it now thanks to the features provided by a blockchain, and of course, the speed being the other factor. The fully secured system came online in 2012, that is the actual full blockchain with all proper permissions and authorizations came in 2012. Citizens can track all government related transactions that use their personal information in an audit log accessible to the state portal. If I want to see, when we pay income taxes, once in a while they may get audited. So, if I want to see when my income taxes were audited, I can always go back into this and say when it was audited, and maybe there is a reason why it was audited. I can always go back and show to the government when I paid my income taxes every year and what did I pay, how much I paid, the basis on which I paid. So, same goes for paying property taxes. If I sold a piece of land to somebody which is in the land registry, or if I bought a piece of land from somebody, in case of a dispute, I should be able to go to this distributed ledger and get the relevant information going all the way to the history, and I can only do mine. As a citizen, generally the rights are controlled in such a way that authorities can look at information of everyone, I can look at mine, and typically they also give a provision that if I see any mistake, there are methods by means of which I can approach the agency and get information about me corrected. For every transaction, there is proof that the transaction was registered on the blockchain, and from that time forward it can be changed. I paid a tax on the 31st of March this year, that was entered onto the blockchain. Once done, no agency sitting anywhere can go and change that I did not pay taxes. So, this has benefits both for the government and for us citizens. So, this is an example of very widespread use of e-governance in general and how blockchain has made that possible. But we need to remember that before this country reached this point of being able to leverage blockchain to provide any and every service, the foundation had to be established. It started in 2001. Along with the internet, it started various e-governance initiatives. As part of it, it provided an electronic identity to every one of them. Like only now in India, we have a paper identity for all of us in the form of Aadhaar. This government, so now even if we show Aadhaar copy, we have to sign that because it is still based on signature, whereas in 2001, this country went ahead and gave digital signatures to everyone. So, they do not have to have a photo ID or anything, they can use the private key to sign all the documents. So, with that kind of a foundation, first they put it online, they put it in different databases, they combine it to a decentralized distributed database. So, step by step, it has taken them 20 years in a small country, but now they are at a stage where every interaction with the government is captured, it is done electronically, it is captured in a single source, it is captured in a single source visible to all the relevant parties, it is captured in a single source which provides traceability, it captures them in a single source which is trustable because transactions once made cannot be changed on a retrospective basis. If I have to change my address, which if it is wrong today, if I have to go change my address, I have to go change my date of birth, if I have to go and change the spelling of my name, it is done as a new transaction. So, at any point I should be able to say I changed my name on this particular day, it was not done retrospectively by somebody else. An extremely good example of the various applications that one single technology can bring to a whole country. Can every country reach this point? Maybe not, but different aspects can be applied as available. Let us move on to the next example, digital identity. Essentially, just now we saw it provided a digital identity in the form of a blockchain and in the form of a digital certificate. And the issue with digital certificate is that the certifying authority, it depends on who the certifying authority is. For example, the state of Karnataka for its e-procure initiative has said 3 private companies are allowed to issue digital certificates. If I remember correctly, TCS is one of them. So, if I sign my digital document for e-procure for government of Karnataka, it is TCS which is certifying me that I am that person, that particular certificate belongs to me. So, one issue is who is the certifying authority, how do we trust? Now, the state government trusts TCS based on some agreement we have, some verification. Can we make it more transparent? Do I have to depend on TCS or some other company? You know, in business world, companies get taken over, companies buy other companies, they break themselves into different parts. So, how can we liberate out of that and make it more transparent? Now, TCS is keeping the registry of, I am taking an example, I do not mean TCS in particular, I am taking this as an example. They are maintaining the registry of all private certificates that they have issued, they guarantee. Can I move away from TCS and have a transparent way where anyone can go and see who owns this? Does Sudhendar Hanumantha really own this public key? Can I go and verify that? So, you can see that kind of an activity. This is a digital identity which can be made universal and independent of any individual party by a judicious use of a blockchain. That is what is the next case study we are going to see. Some of the key highlights in digital identity. Blockchain based digital identity is a high impact global scale application. Why? Because all of us do require identity. The world's population is about 8 billion something, so we require 8 billion identities. The most internationally accepted identity is obviously the passport. If all of us travel, all of us would require we require a total of 8 billion passports. When we travel, even children have passports, babies have passports, right? Once you are born, you can apply for a passport, you have to change it later. We have various other sources of identity. As we briefly touched upon, we have the voter's ID, driver's license, PAN card, Aadhaar card. So many identities we establish in the world. So, this projects in digital identity will have a global impact, high impact, global. Can I have one single identity I can produce everywhere? Can I have one block of code, one file, one card which I can use it as a ATM card, I can use it for driver's license, I can use it to pay toll on the highway, can I have one single card? That is how it will have a global impact. Reconciling data immutability with right to be forgotten laws is a key challenge for the sector. For example, what does this mean? The thing about the blockchain is that once data goes in, it stays there, we cannot change. So, for example, let me take a slightly unpleasant example. If I am convicted for some crime, maybe for stealing something, maybe I made a mistake, I was speeding, I got a speeding ticket and I got 2 speeding tickets and my driver's license was impounded. All this record of all these crimes goes into the blockchain. In many countries even today it does, it goes into some database, not necessarily a blockchain, but many countries also have a provision where after a fixed period of time, let us say I have a speeding violation, I have 2 speeding violations in 2010, thanks to this my driver's license was impounded for 6 months. This record is there. So, when some insurance company insures me in 2019, they can actually look at it and say, look, you are an unsafe driver because there is a record, you got a speeding ticket, you got 2 speeding tickets in 2010. And many countries have something called a statute of limitations on various crimes, where after a fixed period, suppose I do not get a single speeding ticket over the next 10 years, that record will be removed from my records. That particular incident, the 2 speeding tickets I got in 2010, suppose I drive safely, carefully for the next 10 years. In 2020, if an insurance company goes and looks at my driving record, they will not find a record of this, it will be removed from there. So, now you can see the problem with blockchain in identity now. Now, part of my identity is that I got 2 speeding tickets in 2010, in 2021 it should not be there, but blockchains cannot be changed. So, how do we reconcile this essential characteristic, that is strength of blockchain, with the social requirement? Many countries have this requirement, so that is the challenge. It has high impact, but addressing this challenge, how do we reconcile that? Data immutability means data cannot be changed, but this feature, right to be forgotten, many countries provide this right that after 10 years there is a right that my misdemeanor 10 years back, my getting a speeding ticket should be forgotten. That blockchain will not allow by nature. So, how do we adjust the two is a key challenge for this sector. The 2 top benefits of blockchain in identity are reduction of fraud or increase in transparency. With a single source for establishing identity theft becomes difficult. Somebody else cannot forge my signature, somebody else cannot forge my face or photo, forge my passport, because there is an immutable record of when, how and where I established my identity. If I have to change, how was it changed, what aspect of it changed, everything was there. So, if you want to change anything, if you want to steal my passport and change the name for example, you have to go to the blockchain, change it retrospectively, and as we have seen from the very first lecture, changing anything in the blockchain going back into the past is practically impossible. So, it will help us reducing fraud and identity theft and similar crimes and increased efficiency. And blockchain tracking and security enable more than half of these initiatives to mitigate identity issues in the developing world. As I said, today identity is maintained in so many sources. So, if I change my identity if I change my name and my birth certificate, I have to go change it in my bank account, I have to change my driver's license, I have to change my passport. It cannot be done in one single source, because I have to go to each one of these offices and change my name. With blockchain, I do it in one place, big issues solved. So, these are the 4 highlights of applying blockchain in digital identity. One is that it is a very high impact issue, but the very inherent strength of a blockchain poses problems in this area. So, we will not be able to apply it in every field for providing digital identity, but if we can do it, it can have a significant impact. As we have seen in highlight number 4, if it can be done on blockchain, if I change my spelling of my name, or for example, when women marry, they change their last name. Today they have to change it in so many places. So, sometimes they do not even bother. But now if you do it in one source, everywhere where your identity, your name is used, it can be automatically changed and it will reduce identity theft and fraud. We will see one use case. Digital identity, an organization called 8Tech, founded in 2015. Billions of dollars in foreign aid are lost each year due to corruption. Aid is one area where every year billions of dollars are provided in aid, but a big chunk of it gets lost due to corruption, and aid agencies are never sure that the aid they provided reached the real beneficiaries or was it stolen. They can never be sure how much of it was lost. Also, secondly, also money needs to be exchanged between different currencies and across multiple financial institutions, leading to high cost and slow settlement. And it is not as simple as some agency sitting in the US just giving dollars to some educational institution in India or an educational institution in Africa. They have to submit it to their bank, it has to get approved, it has to get submitted to India where government has to approve around the FAIR Act and so many other acts, and then it has to get deposited to the bank locally, then get distributed to the particular educational institution. It also has to go through a lot of foreign exchange conversion. There is significant cost and time required for settlement. 8Tech, an Irish technology company, seeks to solve these problems by creating a platform that enables NGOs and foreign aid distribution agencies to easily provision digital identities and to transparently track aid distribution worldwide. How do they do that? How does this agency do? The key is this: easily provision digital identities, which means provide digital identities in some form, in the form of a biometrics, in the form of a digital signature to beneficiaries at the end, and by them approving the process, for example approving the transaction, we can be sure that the aid we have sent to each of these beneficiaries has actually reached them. And this agency has made it easy to provide those digital identities to the intended beneficiaries, so that we have transparency and we have assurance that the aid is reaching the people it is meant for. Their pilot solution successfully delivered and tracked aid distribution to Syrian refugees in 2015. As we know, this is an ongoing crisis of Syrian refugees migrating to various countries, starting from the neighboring countries all the way to Europe and other countries. In this case, it is a pilot project. They distributed over 500 donor aid cards that were tied to non-forgeable identities. So, they distributed 500 cards to 500 beneficiaries which had their identity in some non-changeable form, like in the form of a chip. Typically such cards are called smart cards, or in some form it stored their biometric, it stored their PKI, something like that. So, they were distributed cards which stored their identity in a non-changeable, non-fraudable form. Building the platform on blockchain helped them prevent all attempts to create fraudulent transactions, protecting the underlying aid money. Once identity has been created and given to them in a non-changeable form, and that has been stored on a blockchain, whenever this agency transferred money to their account, imagine we can put a smart contract. We can say that money will be deposited to this beneficiary's account if they present their digital identity, if that is authorized by digital identity. So, I can put a smart contract. First part of the transaction, the aid agency releases money, it goes into an escrow account. This beneficiary presents their digital identity, saying that my bank account is stored with this particular digital identity. Smart card fires it and money gets automatically deposited into the account of the beneficiary. So, now the beneficiary receives the benefit on proving that only they are only they are the eligible recipient, and the aid agency also gets transparent records. They can see when money was released, who presented the identity, when it get approved, and when it was deposited to their account. So, one example where blockchain can be used in something like managing aid using digital identities. However, we should still keep in mind but that this conflict remains, this conflict of reconciling data non-changeability of data, immutability, with the right to be forgotten loss is a key challenge for the sector. There is lot of literature and research going on. How do we manage this? For example, after 10 years, if my speeding tickets have to be removed from my record, how do we do it on a blockchain safely? How do you mask it? Various approaches have been proposed, they are still being tried and debated. Next, energy, climate and environment. This is an interesting case study, we will see that. How can we use blockchain in the area of energy, climate and environment? The majority, 90% of initiatives in energy sector are for profit. Private initiatives are happening in this area and they are piloting various projects and they are all profit based organizations. However, they still deal in the public sector, they are for profit in the public sector as broadly defined. ECA, energy, climate and environment initiatives in developed markets focus on optimizing usage, while those in developing markets focus on last minute energy delivery. The case study makes clear the difference between this, how it is applied differently in a advanced market, how it is deployed in a developing market. Time to impact for more than half the energy, climate and ECA projects is 2 or more years. These projects take a long time to be studied, strategized, implemented and before they start paying benefits. That is a general characteristic that this study found. Projects, blockchain projects in energy, climate and environment take a longer gestation period to show their results. The case study of this company called Mysore. This case study is from our neighboring country Bangladesh and it is about solar energy at a retail home basis. In India also the government is encouraging generation of solar energy at an individual level at each of their houses under various schemes. The way it works in my state Karnataka is that I can put solar cells to generate my own power and it is quite expensive. The last estimate I got for my house on a plot of 40 by 60 square foot is about 3.5 lakhs. It is a significant amount for anyone for that matter. And how do I get the return on my investment? 3.5 lakhs, how do I get a return on my investment? What the state government has done in Karnataka is they have come up with a scheme where I have to do the investment, I have to pay the money, get the solar electricity system done, implemented in my place, including the cells, batteries and various things. It starts generating electricity. It may generate more power than I need, or it generates power and then I have to consume. I cannot store all the power, I have to consume as it comes. If it generates less power than what I need, I can take power from the state grid, the local distribution company called Chamundeshwari Electricity Distribution Company, SESCOM. I can take power from SESCOM at the same time along with my battery. But say in the night, my solar system does not generate any power, I have stored in the battery, so I take power from SESCOM. During the day, I do not use as much power, I do not have enough batteries. All the extra power that my solar system is generating, I can give it back to SESCOM, I can feed it back to the grid, it is called feeding back to the grid. SESCOM has the grid, I am connected to the grid. So, when I need power, I take it from the grid. When I generate surplus power, it may happen during the night also, I mean I have generated more during the day, I can feed it back to the grid and the state pays me a higher than retail price as an incentive. For example, if I take power, I pay 6 rupees to 1 unit or something like that. When I give power back to the grid, the state pays me something like 10 rupees as an incentive. This is an incentive from the state for me to make that investment in going for setting up the solar power system at my home. That is how it works in an advanced state where electricity grids are there everywhere. Like now India, we are almost approaching 100% availability of electricity distribution in the country, and in where I stay it has always been there, the grid has been there, it is very efficient, it is connected to everybody. So, this process works seamlessly, one setup. How do we do the same kind of incentive scheme or some incentive to the producers, because investment is still heavy in areas where there is no grid. There are many areas, obviously Bangladesh seems to have significant areas where there is no grid. The state does not provide power to those regions. Even in India also we have regions like that. So, how do we set up solar systems with an incentive scheme built into that, so that if I need more power, I can get more power from outside, or if I am generating too much, I can sell it to somebody, because I cannot sell it back to the grid. SolShare's mission is to bring electricity to remote regions of Bangladesh by using clean and reliable solar panels. More than just selling solar kits, that is the usual the solar generation mechanism, which comprises of the solar panels and the batteries and supporting infrastructure and connection to the grid. More than just selling solar kits to households, SolShare creates a small local energy grid that allows these households to produce and trade electricity with each other. So, say in an area there are 100 houses, it creates a grid amongst themselves. So, obviously given the variety, there may be houses which require more power at certain times, and there are houses which require less power. A house with a big area with less number of people may need less power, it is in a position to sell the electricity to a house which has more people, which consumes more power. There may be a shop in the neighboring area which may not generate any power because it is the ground floor of a big building, but it requires power, it can buy power from all the neighboring houses. So, that is a local grid. Their product Solbox is a device that enables homeowners to buy electricity as needed by paying for tokens via mobile phone or SMS. So, it has set up a grid where if I need more power, I can buy it from my neighbors. If my neighbor is the one who is generating power, if they have excess, they can always sell it to me, thus providing an incentive for them to make that investment, because there may be some houses which do not need power, but they may be reluctant to go for a solar system, but there may be shops and other establishments which normally may not be able to generate the power, but they can buy it from their neighbors, thus both gain from the system. Blockchain technology allows the decentralized trade of energy and payments, shifting power to local households which are getting affordable access to clean energy, with increased benefit of becoming micro producers and potentially having a new source of income. I have a big yard, I do not have any other business, I can use it to generate power and sell it to the shop which pays me, which is source of income for me. The company has set up 10 microgrids in Bangladesh and envisions setting up 10,000 grids by 2030, reaching over 1 million users. This is an application of blockchain in the energy field in a developing nation. In developed nations, its blockchain is used to allow trading of electricity between big grids. For example, in the United States, there are one national grid, but each part of the grid is controlled by one different private company. So, if one company is generating more power during the night, for example, hydroelectricity, nuclear power, they continue generating. Nuclear power has to be generated 24 hours a day. It can trade that power to a region where there is day. For example, US has 4 time zones. So, if it is 6 o'clock in New York, if it is 10 o'clock in night in New York, it is actually 6 o'clock in California, it is still evening. At 9 in the night, it is 5 o'clock in California. So, the power generated in the night in New York can be traded to California for those 4 hours, whereas power generated in the morning in California, when it is still daylight in the evening in California, can be fed back to New York. And likewise, they can all trade power based on a temporary requirements which can keep changing. So, blockchains are being used to permit, they are still actually trading, those agencies are still doing this trade. Blockchain is being deployed to make sure that everybody can see who has surplus power, who has less power, they can optimize their production, bringing down the total cost. So, there the idea is to enable these big companies to optimize their generation and trading of energy. In a smaller country, it is to empower individuals to generate energy and use it and trade it as it when it is required. That is what was referred to in this point. It said EC initiatives in developed markets focus on optimizing usage, while those in developing markets focus on last mile energy delivery. Remember, sole shares project, their device, their grid can be set up anywhere. There does not have to be a state grid. If there are houses with no power, it can be set there. Another big initiative, land rights, making sure that documents are stored. The key highlights among these initiatives: land rights develop overlaps with democracy and governance, and land registry is often a government service. In most countries, keeping track of who owns which piece of land is always tracked by government. We have the various registrar's office, sub-registrar's office in various cities, in various states of India. They are the ones who register. Whenever a piece of land gets sold from party A to party B, the transaction gets recorded in the sub-registrar's office. There is a very elaborate process for all that, a big chunk of forms to be filled, and there is a very elaborate industry which takes care of the whole documentation, getting it approved. You have to go there, put your biometrics, take your photo, various means. In most countries it is controlled by the governments, and land rights are seen as a critical element of governance. Any country which can prove land rights, provide land rights, empowers its citizens to take ownership. Governments partnering with private sector technology providers is the norm for land rights sector. Most attempts here, government keeps the right of keeping those records, but how do we manage those records safely? How do we provide copies? How do we take a backup? Whenever records change hand, who makes the change, and how do we record both the copies, previous records, new records? These transaction activities are outsourced to a private sector. Results for land right blockchain initiatives are already reaching impact and will do so by end of 2009. Most of these projects are at an advanced stage and they will start bearing fruit quickly. Impact for transparent and well recorded land titles could be transformational on a global scale. This land keeping track of land rights, historically as we evolved, human beings evolved, there is no concept of land rights. Anybody could go anywhere and occupy whatever land we want. As governments gained more and more control over governance, as nations formed, this concept of land rights came, and it became necessary to maintain as to who owns land, who owns what piece of land, and how do the land rights should be governed, and under what conditions governments can take over land, under what conditions land can be sold to parties. In India, many states have various rules which, for example, say that agricultural lands cannot be converted into non-agricultural uses without government approval, without paying the fees and various things. So, land rights are closely controlled as part of governance. So, if these projects are done correctly, it can have a global impact. Let us look at one example of that, a company called Chromaway. Who owns what land can be a contentious question, always subject to a big chunk of court cases and disputes in India. Always comes from this source, that who owns which piece of land. In the bygone days of approximately 350 years Swedish land registry, Sweden has been a very advanced country for a long time. They had a land registry, like a registry to keep track of who owns which piece of land for more than 350 years. Government officials in the old days habitually carried swords to defend themselves in case land disputes got particularly heated. There is a dispute about a piece of land, two parties come to the registry office. If the government official says it belongs to A, party B will start a fight. If government official says it belongs to B, party A will start a fight. So, protect themselves, they used to carry swords, it seems. So, it was a very contentious issue everywhere. So, how is it done now? Sweden is a far more advanced country with better data today, but how is it done today? Swedish based startup Chromaway is working with governments in Sweden and the Indian state of Andhra Pradesh, among other not yet public locations, to maintain land titles and legal records of property transactions on a blockchain based systems. What does it mean? If this project is completely done, tomorrow if I am considering to buy a plot of land or a house from some other party, I do not have to go to the nearest registry, pay a fee, also pay some third party, a broker, an additional fee to follow up and get me the encumbrance certificate, for example. An encumbrance certificate typically shows who owns that piece of land currently, who owned it before, when did the transaction happen, how many transactions have happened in the past, a record of all those. And if the owner says, and if there are any other conditions on that land, for example, if the owner says I own this piece of land and his name is ABC, the encumbrance certificate should show that ABC is the current owner of the land, and they may show other details. For example, he might have pledged that piece of land to a bank for a loan. The encumbrance certificate will show that this ABC owns the land, but it is pledged to the bank. So, to get this document, it is not easy today. It takes a lot of time, effort and money. So, if it is put on a blockchain, if I show a need, I pay a fee showing that I have a need to buy this, it will be transparently available. I do not have to go to the office, sitting at my home accessing the blockchain, I should be able to see that. That is the promise, and that is what this company is trying to implement. It is trying to implement in a country like Sweden, where records are fairly accurate and available. It is also trying to implement in India, in Andhra Pradesh. In India, that is what it goes on to say. In India, however, storing land titles on a publicly verifiable and immutable blockchain could greatly reduce fraud and corruption, because land titles could be traced over time. What I was referring to, all the cost, time and effort involved, additional cost among various owners with a record that could not be changed or hidden. That is a benefit, that much of the litigation can be reduced if we can have clear land titles. And that is one of the challenges, but the effort is underway. Perhaps one of the biggest challenges to implement blockchain for social impact are laws and policies that never envisioned a digital future. Land records today are not public records, they are actually stored by the sub-registrar. They will be made available for a fee. So, there are laws which says only sub-registrar can keep track of all these records, only sub-registrar can make changes into these records, only the registrar's office can do all these things. Those government laws, when they were made to protect the buyer and the seller, the land title holder at any point. And when the laws were made, they never imagined that there will be a technology tomorrow which lets users to make this change with proper approvals, so that there is clear trust, there is clear transparency, there is clear traceability. So, the key point here is modifying those laws. Those laws were made in an era people never thought these things are possible. Now, they are possible, the laws may have to be modified. If tomorrow, if today, if the rule says that only a sub-registrar can register purchase of a land, sale of a land, if we have to implement a blockchain, we may have to give that permission to somebody else. What is the idea of a blockchain? Anybody can register the transaction, right, at least in theory. So, today if I buy a piece of land in my area, I have to go to my sub-registrar only, nobody else will do that. Tomorrow, if both the buyer and seller are in a different city, say buyer and seller is in Bangalore, the property is in Mysore, today to register that property both have to come to Mysore. But tomorrow with a blockchain, it is theoretically possible that they can go, they may not be able to make the change, but they can go to a sub-registrar in Bangalore and get the change done. Today rules do not allow that. The rules were made in that era where such a thing was not considered possible. Today such a thing is possible, so they may be the problem in implementing land title records in every country, but such a thing is possible. We can still stick to the laws, modify a little. So, I can register my property in Bangalore instead of, I remember my own case when I bought my home from a third party from a bank, I had to travel to Mysore from Bangalore, the seller also was in Bangalore, he had to travel to Mysore, the bank officials had to come with me to make sure that the documents are all collected clean and all. So, this entire time and effort, one day of their time and effort, one day of my time and effort, one day of this time and effort can be minimized. So, that is one of the promises of this application in land units. Here is one more example from Denmark, again in the public sector, and I have seen this problem myself. Let us see what it is. Vehicle wallet. During a car's life cycle, it undergoes various phases and activities. A car is bought, it is tested, it is repaired, if it is in an accident, it is fixed back, we might have taken a loan against it, we pay back the loan, I would have insured the car, I would have collected insurance to fix something, or if it is an accident I collect my insurance, or if the car is completely destroyed I collect the totaling fee. and changes in ownership. Remember the example for a smart contract. How is a car sold by a smart contract? That is a change in ownership. When I buy the car, the record has to go to the RTO that this car's ownership changed. This registration number used to belong to party A, that car with that registration number now from this point on belongs to party B. When a car is sold from one person to another, there can be a lack of information from either the buyer or the seller. What does it mean? When somebody sells me the car, I may not have all the information on the things that could have happened to this car. On the seller's side, the car could have undergone an undesirable rebuild or even be stolen. When somebody sells me a car, how do you know this car was stolen? They might have forged the documents, or it happened to one of my friends. He bought a car in the United States, and after buying the car, he thought for what was claimed, the mileage on the car, it was too cheap. He got a doubt, how come they are selling me this car with so little mileage, so cheap? So he had to pay a fee to an insurance company. The insurance company had kept the records. He had to pay a fee, and then he found out this car was in an accident a few years back. It was declared a total loss. The insurance company wrote it off, paid off the owner. The owner corrected the wreck, rebuilt it and sold it again. So it was possible in a country like US because the insurance companies kept track of the records, and he had to pay a fee for that, and it took him some time. He could not do it before the sale was done. Had he known this, that this car was involved as a wreck and now it has been restored, he might have either not bought it or negotiated a better price. And imagine in a country like India, we simply cannot get such information so easily. On the buyer side, the buyers could never re-register the car, which could result in continuous taxes for the original seller. I could buy the car, not register it, not go to the RTO office and change. So the tax demand will go to the original owner because the car is still in the original owner's number. So all these are problems in vehicle ownership, and let us see how it is solved by using a blockchain. That is, it keep track of life history of that particular entity, that is a car. Vehicle wallet is a partnership between payment service provider and the Danish tax administration. So government is working with a private party. It is a supply chain management tool where data concerning the car is saved in one distributed ledger and creates one agreed and shared record of the vehicle history as that is transferred across the supply chain. So now what happens in this case, the tax administration and the payment service provider, probably an insurance company, agree to join their efforts and maintain the information in a blockchain. So when party A sells the car to party B, the insurance has to change. He may not register the car, insurance has to change, that gets registered. The payment service notices that party A paid party B X amount of money, and it was in the smart contract that he gave the car to him. They will write in the blockchain that ownership of this car changed from party A to party B. The tax registry has access to that information. They will look at it and apply the road tax to party B. If the vehicle is totaled, tax will be cancelled and things like that. This reduces the risks for buyers and sellers and helps ensure that Denmark receives all proper taxes. So for a buyer, the advantage is I can go to this registry maintained by this payment service and the tax, and to make sure that this car was in good condition for the past 5 years, 5-year-old car, and all the taxes have been paid, I can safely buy this car. The seller, after the sale, can make sure that the buyer actually has registered the car and the road tax is being charged to the buyer. So one example where two different parties can collaborate, keep separately kept information in a joint blockchain, modify accordingly, and any third party can look into it and verify the data. Both the buyer and seller, they may not be able to directly maintain data in the blockchain, but both need to verify the data. They both need to see what has happened and come to right decisions. So another interesting public sector example. Land records. One more example from Ghana. We saw one example from Sweden, Andhra Pradesh, one more from Ghana. This is very similar. This is very similar to the one proposed by Cromaway. I mentioned this because it is done on Ethereum registry. This blockchain was developed on the Ethereum platform, and the benefit is important. Property transaction times have been reduced by 70% and court disputes have been reduced. This is a promise. This is a promise for all third world countries, advanced countries, developing countries, whatever is the right term, that if we implement land registry correctly, the transaction time will be reduced, cost will be reduced, litigation will come down. And this example shows that it is already bearing fruit in a country like Ghana. Probably we will look at one more case. Blockchain in governance case study, payment project called UBIN. The Monetary Authority of Singapore conducted a study that found that interbank payments within Singapore and cross border financial transactions were inefficient and slow. It is in fintech, except that I have included here because it is the public organization, public sector organization, Monetary Authority. They implemented this blockchain. And one more reason why I included is that here the blockchain is built on R3. Remember, in one of the previous lectures we talked about various blockchain development platforms. The two most common were the Ethereum platform and the Hyperledger. R3 by a company called Corda was developed specifically for fintech, for developing blockchains on fintech. This is an example of a blockchain developed on the R3 platform by this authority. A consortium of banks and regulators to create a prototype for a blockchain based digital dollar, Singaporean dollar, to facilitate digital transactions. This would allow for incorruptibility of resorts to decentralized system, 24-hour processing, no centralization or human checks, and other benefits which we expect from a blockchain. The blockchain has successfully developed software prototypes of 3 different models for decentralized interbank payment that are now being explored. MAS has published the source code as open source software on GitHub. GitHub is a source where all the people contribute their projects they do. Anyone can borrow that and use it. So, this company, the Monetary Authority of Singapore, public sector organization, they have developed this blockchain in fintech, actually 3 platform developed for fintech, and as a service they have put that entire project on this site called GitHub. If any other country wants to borrow, they can go to GitHub, take the software and implement it at a much lower cost. One more example of a public sector, public minded project, although in fintech. So, as we can see, the applicability of blockchain in governance and public sector is enormous. It's almost matching as many applications in private sector. New initiatives are being discovered, new applications are being discovered, new applicability is being discovered. Quite an exciting field to keep our eye on. This brings to an end our 9th lecture. Thank you.